Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting for all of the attendees to be able to log in. So I appreciate it to take a minute and then we'll be starting. So thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm delighted and excited to welcome you to the third of the Gosport Ambassadors meetings. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to meet me or attend one of these meetings previously, my name is Andy Grant. I'm principal at St Vincent College in Gosport and also have the honour of being chair of the place board for Gosport. It's brilliant so many of you have been able to join us for our third of what will be bi-monthly Gosport Ambassadors meetings as representatives of local businesses, residents and organisations from across the area. If we are going to grow a successful Gosport, particularly if we're going to rebuild and recover following COVID, we're going to have to do that together, and your support is going to be absolutely crucial. Growing a prosperous Gosport is at the heart of this new place approach, and it's all of our responsibility to deliver the Gosport story and to get our messages out there in the wider community. This has already been a fantastic and inspiring journey, which I truly believe will play a significant part in making Gosport a destination of choice and enabling us to become even more proud of what we have as an extraordinary place. I'm conscious that many of you may not know who I am or what I do and why I'm excited about this initiative. As I mentioned, I'm principal here at St Vincent Sixth Form College. I'm located just off Mill Lane. We are a small size sixth form provider, providing education for young people aged 16 to 19, which includes vocational and A-level based qualifications, alongside our adult education facilities and the specialist provision for students that require enhanced learning provision. I'm very keen to support the development of Gosport. Our learners are the future of Gosport, and indeed the adults that access our provision are looking to develop their skills and experience to offer more widely to their local community and to develop their skills and experiences. So it's a very exciting time, not only for us as a college, but for Gosport as a region. As I mentioned, I'm also chair of the Place Board, which is a leadership group who are essentially the guardians of the Gosport story and the brand, and the ultimate champions of what Gosport essentially sets out to be. This small group of enthusiastic and passionate individuals is all about Gosport and how we're going to use our leadership, energy, ideas, contacts and insight to promote the place at every opportunity and hopefully inspire others to do the same. I'm extremely proud and humbled to have this role, and we'll be giving it everything I've got to ensure this initiative is successful and will be everything that it can be. I should note that today's event is being recorded and will be distributed after the event. And whilst you have a phone or tablets maybe to hand, it would be great if you could show your support to make your voice heard by tweeting as we go along using the hashtag #ThisIsGosport. As a reminder and recap, I just want to start by going back to where this all began and who's involved and what we've achieved together to date and what the plans are going forward. There was indeed in our history a consensus amongst leaders from businesses, organisations and the public sector that Gosport was punching well below its weight, and that the reality of the place is very better than the image and that our potential was not being fully recognised. It was agreed that Gosport should develop a forward-looking place at the heart of the new market-led provision for Gosport. To create this large piece of stakeholder engagement, a large piece of stakeholder engagement took place across the area, undertaken by place experts Thinking Place, who have been advising us on our journey. The aim of this initiative is to get as many people and organisations behind the approach as possible and telling and selling the Gosport story. But let me remind you a little bit about what the Gosport story is. Our story articulates the distinctiveness, character and characteristics of Gosport, highlighting what makes us special and the opportunities for development and promotion. This overarching narrative consists of themes which are pillars and chapters of our story. They've been identified because elements of them have shaped the place it is today, and they will certainly be central to Gosport's future. This is a story that comes from our roots, but it's also our tomorrow. The first theme is our deep blue celebration. Gosport's sense of place is inextricably linked to the sea. It is our naval history and livability future. Our island-like environment has created a special waterfront experience and opportunity as we look to repurpose ex-military sites for inspiring life and workspaces, whilst our water is home to everything from messing about on boats to elite water sports. It is accompanied as well by an attractive and developing leisure offer. The second theme of the Gosport story is reimagining and animating our history. Gosport is steeped in history and stories, and outside of London has the most listed buildings of anywhere in the country. We continue bringing this to life through festivals, events, the public realm, ensuring that we celebrate the personality of the place by celebrating life, death, endeavour and tragedy. The third theme is the environment for fresh thinking. Gosport likes to do things differently. It's in our DNA. As a place, we have always embraced innovation and creativity, and looking to do so again by encouraging entrepreneurs to base themselves in our characterful workshops. We have an independent spirit and are building on what is already a reinvention of our high street of working, leisure and living. And finally, our big idea is that at the heart of our story, Gosport, our growth is natural and new. Gosport has its sights firmly set on being a distinct and special destination for culture, leisure, working and living by the sea. Our legacy of unique historic buildings and fantastic climate gives us the chance to attract new businesses and talent, forging a spirit of enterprise in a location that oozes opportunity and stirs the soul. As you can hear, we have a fantastic story to tell. This leads me on to explaining a bit more about the Gosport Ambassadors programme. We're extremely fortunate to already have many individuals and company who are quietly great ambassadors for Gosport, who promote the place, speak up for it, and want to take part in taking the area forward. We spoke at our first ambassador meeting in December. Hopefully you attended this meeting or have had the opportunity to watch the recording back. We wanted to build on that fantastic work these individuals and companies are doing by creating a team Gosport approach. Some of the feedback that we have received from the first meeting was that there was a little confusion as to what the ambassador program is, how you could get involved, and what you have to do to become an ambassador, and what it would like to do to support that. So we thought that we would use today's meeting to walk through all of this with you, firstly by inviting Sarah Perry, Director of Thinking Place, to do just that. Some of you will remember Sarah and her team who worked with us to develop the Gosport story and the ambassador program in its early stages. Following this, we'll be delighted to be joined by Sharon Summerfield, the Place Board Manager from Harlow, to share some real experiences from the success of that ambassador program in the Harlow region. We appreciate that Harlow is a completely different place, has different assets, opportunities and challenges, but hopefully you will see what can be achieved if we all work together. And finally, we will receive an update from Debbie Gore, Head of Planning and Regeneration and Assistant to the Chief Executive at Gosport Borough Council, on some of the exciting developments and projects that are happening in Gosport and the surrounding area, and how you and your organisation potentially get involved in assisting with those. After all these presentations from the speakers, you'll be invited to participate and join a panel to answer questions and answers. Please use the Q&A function in the chat function to ask your questions, and we hope to cover as many of these in the session by the end. At that point, I'd like to thank you for joining today, and I would like to hand over to our first guest, Sarah Perry, Director of Thinking Place. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Andy. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Sarah Perry, Director at Thinking Place, and as Andy mentioned, we had the real pleasure of working with Gosport and its stakeholders to develop the Gosport story and marketing approach. I've been asked to come along today to provide you with a bit of a recap on the approach, where it came from, what it's trying to achieve, and why it's so important in the current climate. To then talk a bit about the Ambassador Programme, what it is, and how you can get involved. So firstly, it's a challenging time for all places and no different for Gosport. Everyone is trying to look to recover the economy as we emerge from COVID. And the world of retail has changed for good, and town centres are going to be very different places. However, Gosport is in a real strong position. It has taken bold steps to being place-led in all that it does, and putting you, its stakeholders, at the heart of the town and the area by doing things differently. So if we look at what's important for places at the moment, and in terms of what we're advising them to focus on, having a clear direction of travel for a place, an agreed and focused view of what the place needs to become as developed through the eyes of the stakeholders, you have this, the Gosport story. More people need to step up and put their head above the parapet in helping the council drive change and grow the economy for the benefit of all. You've got this in the Place Board led by Andy Grant. The council can't fix the economy and get Gosport on the map for investment to attract visitors and bring talent into the area by themselves. There needs to be a sales force for Gosport. People need to work together more, just like we did when COVID first hit. And we need to make the best of the talented people in our community. You are it, our ambassadors, to get that message out there. We're not going to be gifted with major investments. This is a time of austerity, and we're going to have to fight like crazy for our share of the cake. Gosport will have to make the most of what it's got. Its natural beauty, its development sites, its leading businesses. You've got to answer the question, why Gosport? This is what the story and the insight provided by the ambassador meeting is aiming to do, to give you the opportunity to tell people what we've got going for us. And if we do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. So Gosport has got to think and act differently, which is what this whole place programme is about. So think about places, so the things many places are thinking about doing, Gosport is already doing. So in a way, you are ahead of the game. This doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it does mean we have some of those tools in place. So if we start with the Place Board is the leadership group for Gosport and the ultimate guardians of the Gosport story and brand. They provide the strategic and place-led leadership for the promotion and development of Gosport, with a key role of championing Gosport locally, regionally, and internationally. So as Andy mentioned, he chairs this group, and on the screen now, you will see the group of people that make up that board. This is still a newly formed group, and the roles and priorities will evolve as things develop. If we move on to the Gosport Ambassadors, so the whole idea and thinking behind the Ambassador Programme is again to widen that place leadership for businesses, organisations and individuals across Gosport to take on the role as the sales force for the area, who will then use the narrative to get the message out there about Gosport to their networks and contacts. So some of you have asked, is there a criteria to be an ambassador and what do I need to do? So the answer is simple. The criteria is that you have to be prepared to talk up Gosport, celebrate its successes and get involved with different initiatives as and when they develop. We totally appreciate that not everything in Gosport is positive and there are massive challenges that we're all facing. But as we all know, sometimes it is easier to be negative and focus on the things that we haven't got, opposed to the positives and the things that we do have. And in Gosport, you have a lot of assets. There are a lot of great things happening and plans in place for its future. And Debbie will be covering this later in the meeting. Also, there isn't a maximum number of ambassadors that we're looking for. In a way, it's the more the merrier, as we'll have more voices out there telling the Gosport story. And some of you will have a more of an active role than others, and that's also absolutely fine. So the next question that some of you have been wondering, so what's the format and the programme of the ambassador meetings? So as Andy's mentioned, this is our kind of second, third meeting of the ambassador programme. And obviously, unfortunately, due to the circumstances, these have all had to take place virtually at the moment. But the purpose of these meetings is to provide an opportunity for you as, again, businesses, organisations and individuals to come together on a regular basis to hear about the new initiatives, the new developments and the success stories from the people that are making them happen. There'll be great things that are happening in Gosport that happen behind closed doors. And what we want to do is to uncover them and share them with you so that you can go back into your networks and share the great success. So as we know, COVID has altered the way that we will be running these meetings, but when the timing is right, We will hold these meetings in some of Gosport's finest and quirkiest venues and buildings. And alongside that, you'll be able to network, create relationships that will benefit you and Gosport, influence and learn about the place, and act as spokespeople for it, and perhaps even develop initiatives with each other. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, what's good for business and organisations in Gosport will be good for the place and vice versa. So these meetings are a starting point to give you some of the knowledge of what is happening for you to either get involved or to tell others of the positive things that are happening. So this leads me on to one of the final questions that we've been asked is there any information available for us that we can use as part of this new approach? And the answer is yes, there is, and there will be more that will be developed. So let's start with what we've already got. So we have a storybook. In Andy's introduction, he outlined the themes that make up the Gosport story. So this has been designed in a physical storybook. And the aim of the storybook is to be the Gosport brand Bible, to clearly and simply set out the Gosport you all wanted to see based on the engagement that took place to develop this. We have copies of these that are ready to be distributed or located in places for you to collect. But again, due to the COVID restrictions, this has been a little bit challenging. However, the storybook is available online, which I will cover shortly in terms of how you can access it. But if, like me, you prefer to touch and feel the document, please get in contact with Andrew Sugden at the council and he'll arrange for a copy to get to you as soon as practically possible. So we also have a visual way of communicating the story. So you will have seen a glimpse of this in some of the slides that have been shown so far, in the storybook itself, and some of you may have seen some of this in action across Gosport already. So the visuals was created from the development of the Gosport story, and it's a visual tool for us to all use. So a simple toolkit with all the visual assets is available for you to use when developing any collateral, from signage to brochures and anything in between. You'll see that it's really flexible tool that can either be used full on, or it can be used as a watermark alongside your individual organisation's businesses, and it can also be used in a traditional format in terms of a logo. We also have a great bank of new photography that also communicates elements of that story. So this is free and available for you to all use and will be added throughout the year. So on the screen now is just some examples of this photography. So just to reiterate that this is free and available for you to use as and when. So just to recap, so we have a forward-looking story for Gosport, new photography, a visual language that acts as the glue, and this all comes together in that storybook. And to access all of these, if you visit discovergosport.co.uk, that's on the screen here now, you can download it all from there. So I just wanted to give you, just thought it'd be a good opportunity to actually show you some examples of how this has been used so far, and also some mocked up examples in terms of showing you what the art of the possible is. So here we have an empty unit in Gosport Town Centre, where we actually dressed it in terms of shop vinyl. So it was an opportunity to tell the Gosport story through the photography and some of the key messages. We have the new economic development strategy that also utilises some of those tools that are available in that toolbox, and also the Gosport event guide that was developed last year, to banners within the town centre. Again, that's also having that consistency look and feel. It is a great thing to have. And then we also have here, which is just kind of like an email sign off. So if you wanted to be part of that Gosport family and to put that on the bottom of your email signature, again, that is available for you guys to use. Here's just some examples of just some mocked up things in terms of how the visuals can be used, from bags to banners to business cards. So there will be additional tools that will be developed as we go along. And if there's anything that you can think of that would be helpful for you or your organisation to help promote the area, again, get in contact with Andrew Sugden and we can investigate that going forward. So one of the last questions that we've been asked along the way is, how does this all fit together? So in simple terms, at the top there, we've got the Gosport story, which is the brand and the Bible for Gosport. We then have the Gosport Place Board, which we've talked about, which is the leadership group, the place-led leadership group for the area. Alongside that, we have the HAS Board, which is another kind of grouping of people that are also helping to deliver the two HASs that we have within Gosport. Then underneath that, we have the different strategies, the different plans, the different interventions that are either in place or will be put in place to point to and help deliver that Gosport story. And at the bottom of the slide, we've got the Gosport Ambassadors. So the Gosport Ambassadors, as we talked about, is the sales force for the area that will link into the different projects and the different interventions at different times to help deliver and communicate the Gosport story. There are, of course, the different governance arrangements in place, but I hope that that gives a bit of an understanding of how the different bits of the jigsaw fits together. So just to end, that this is a really exciting time for Gosport. A lot has happened in the 18 months and we've had a global pandemic in the middle. So if you have any questions whatsoever in terms of what I've covered today, add it to the Q&A function and hopefully we'll be able to get to them at the end. If not, send them across to Andrew Sugden and we can get those questions answered for you. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. If any of you have any questions for Sarah that you'd like answered as part of the panel discussion, please add them to the Q&A function. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight and an overview of what the Gosport Ambassadors programme is and what we hope to achieve through it. In order to provide a bit more context about how that can work and how that can develop, I'm very pleased to welcome Sharon Summerfield, who's the Place Board Manager from Harlow, who's going to share her experiences in undertaking this role and what it's meant for the Harlow area. So thank you for joining us, Sharon, and over to you.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to your ambassador event. It's really great to hear the Gosport story, so thank you for inviting me. I want to start actually by thanking Hannah from Gosport, because I took my children to school for the first time on Monday since before Christmas. And I've got 3 boys, and I'm not going to lie, it can be a bit tense in the morning. And we listen to BBC Radio 1 with Greg James, who incidentally is from just outside Harlow. And he does, if you listen to Greg James, you'll know he does a 10-minute takeover. And on that morning, Hannah from Gosport requested Adele's Hometown Glory, which I think, and we can debate this in the Q&A, is one of her finest songs. And it caused a little 3.5 minutes of calm in my car on Monday morning. So if you're out there, Hannah from Gosport, or if you know Hannah from Gosport, please pass on my enormous thanks to her. But okay, down to business. So I am the Place Brand Manager for Harlow in Essex. If any of you know Harlow. And I'm Thinking Place have asked me to join you today to talk a little bit about the project in Harlow and how it's been working, because we've been on the same journey as yourselves, and we're kind of 3 years into it. So I've been the Place Brand Manager for 3 years now. In Harlow. So I want to kind of sort of share some experience from kind of a little bit further down the road, if you like. So we went through the same process as you're going through now. We have our story, our points of interest, or our unique selling points are colour, culture, sculpture, which celebrates Harlow's history and future with the arts. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Harlow, but we have one of the finest collections of outdoor sculpture in the UK. So we're all about colour, culture, sculpture. As the second theme is the science of change, and that is to do with our history and future with the sciences. So we sit in the innovation corridor within the UK, and Harlow was in fact the birthplace of fibre optics, paved the way for the internet, so which we're very proud of. And looking forward, we've got Public Health England moving its entire operation here currently at the moment, and hopefully they'll start moving in by 2022. And the third string to the Harlow story is London lifestyle and location. So we sit equidistant between London and Cambridge, so 30 minutes, and you can be in either by train. So it's a great location for business, but also as a resident as well. You can go into London and enjoy a night out and be back home even on a school night. And so I was thinking, what was our thinking really 2 years ago when we were sort of at the same place as you? And I think it's really interesting to hear the things that have been spoken about already this morning, because I think the biggest thing for us, and I remember sitting in board meetings and with the chief exec as well of Harlow Council, and they said, well, this is great, you know, we've got our story and we've got our ambassadors and they're meeting and they're networking, and that's great for business. But what do they actually do? And it was quite right to ask this question, because obviously as a council they're very focused on the outcomes, they're investing in this process, and so they want to know what the outcomes are. And it was something that kind of kicked around for quite a long time. Okay, what do the ambassadors do? You know, how do they actually kind of help the story evolve? And it was very kind of clear from the beginning there was a lot of engagement, and we've got currently about 450 ambassadors to the Harlow programme, and some of those will read our communications, and that's it. That's their level of kind of engagement, right through to others who might kind of get involved with project work as well, and maybe even join the place board. And I think at that time, I kind of realised, and sort of talking to Thinking Place as well, and they sort of said, you know, don't rush it. You have to kind of let these things evolve, and kind of, but you couldn't help kind of reflecting on it. And I knew the great things that had kind of happened in the Coventry Ambassadors programme. And I thought, well, you know, I'm 18 months into this now, and I haven't created Le Mans on the M11, and I haven't, you know, had an international peace conference, so maybe I'm a bit rubbish at this, you know. And those are the kind of things you start to sort of think about. But I knew we had this kind of vibrant community that was really connected with the Harlow story. And it wasn't until probably actually the end of 2019 going into 2020 that things really started to ignite and really started to kick off. And this is the example that I would like to kind of share with you next. Now, I know the example that I'm going to share with you is actually something that you guys do in your sleep, because it's about tourism. But any of you that know Harlow will know we're not a traditional tourist destination. We're much more about science, innovation and medtech industry. But back in March 2020, with the start of the pandemic, what happened was a hotel in Harlow found that their customer base disappeared overnight. So they were very much involved in overnight stays for business people. And they realised that actually that wasn't coming back for a long time, if actually ever, at the rate that it was. And so they had to pivot, and they had to pivot fast. They got involved with the local NHS actually in providing overnight stays for local NHS and food parcels as well. So that kind of kept them going. But the manageress started to think about the visitor economy in Harlow. But she didn't really know where to start with her idea. She knew that we were involved in the arts. She knew that we were a big cycling community. And she started to think, well, maybe there was something she could do with that in terms of a short break. But she didn't really know where to start. So she started where we all start these days. And she Googled. And when she Googled, she found Discover Harlow, because they weren't actually ambassadors at the time, which is a sort of first top tip really, is to make sure your Google ratings stay high, because that's a great way to be found. Now, again, as I said before, those of you who know Harlow know that unlike Gosport, it's not a tourist destination, but we do have a unique tourist offer that we've never capitalised on, and that's part of our story with Colour, Culture, Sculpture. You know, we've got one of the finest collections in the UK. We've got Barbara Hepworth, Henry Moore, and a Rodin. And for those of you who may know Rodin, you'll know that his most famous piece is the Thinker, the sculpture, the Thinker. And you won't find much of his work outside Paris, but in Harlow, we're very proud to have Eve nestled between Nando's and Next in the town centre. So we can't do quaint Essex Village, but we can do 50s urban cool, and 50s urban cool with some great artwork as well. And we've also got about 130 miles cycle tracks. So you can actually visit all of the sculptures, which there's over 100 of them, without actually ever cycling on a road as well. So we started to think how we could sort of turn this into a business idea. The hotel didn't know who to go to. We didn't currently have a bike hire place or anything like that in Harlow. And so what I did was I pulled together from the Harlow Ambassador group a smaller steering group of people that might be interested in this. So the bike shops, the hotels, the council, other attractions in the town and the Arts Trust. And we started to build a business model for this. Which seemed to work really well with people kind of connecting into it. And then we got to the stage of looking for investment for the bikes. So the bike shop traditionally just sells bikes and does servicing, so they needed to buy hire bikes. And then we hit an obstacle because the hotel have never done this before either. They're part of the Accor group, so a global hotelier chain, but they'd never done anything like this before, and they found it hard to pinpoint exactly what the investment should be. And this is where the Ambassador Group, or an Ambassador Group, really comes into the fore, because what you guys do is unlock doors to these kind of projects. So at that point where it all seemed like it might come to a grinding halt, stepped forward Harlow Council, who said, well, actually, we'd really like a bike library in Harlow. We've got the money for it, but we don't have the resource to run it. And the hotel and the bike shop said, well, okay, we've got the resource to run it, but we don't have the investment. So if you can buy the bikes and we can run a Harlow bike library, in return, can we use those bikes to test out the market on this short break offer? And the Garden Town here and the council said, yeah, that would be a great idea. And now we're moving forward with that. But we've also brought in various other, so the Playhouse, obviously, when things were able to open again, and also local businesses. So we're producing a hamper, a local produce hamper as well, for people who come on the short break to go to the park and have a picnic. And there's no doubt that this project wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the Harlow Ambassador programme. So that's something to kind of be really proud, for us to be really proud of. But it kind of took us 3 years to get here, and to get to that place. But now that it has sparked like that, we've got other things going on as well. So we've got a marketing strategy for commercial property. So I've kind of got together a group of ambassadors that are involved in marketing commercial property, and we're using our comms to amplify that message. We're also looking at a project which is a rooftop solar park, and we're just starting a project with school children to build a satellite with one of our engineering companies that specialise in space exploration, which is really exciting. So I think if I could visit myself a couple of years ago, I would say to myself, well, actually, I'd say to myself, invest in AstraZeneca and Pfizer. But apart from saying that, what I would actually say to myself is, be patient, keep building those relationships, building the ambassador programme, give it time to evolve, and inevitably, as with Harlow, great things will happen for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That's really, really quite inspiring. It's great to see the innovation, I suppose, and opportunities that the Place Board in Harlow has afforded sort of small businesses and opportunities to try new things, which I think we all want to explore, particularly in the current climate. So thank you very much for that. Similarly, to Sarah, if any of you have got any questions that you would like to present or pose to Sharon, please put them in the Q&A function bar at the bottom of your screen, and I will pick them up as part of the panel session at the end of the final presentation. So I'd like to welcome Debbie Gore, Head of Planning and Regeneration, and also Assistant to the Chief Executive at Gosport Borough Council, to provide a little bit more information about what's happening locally. So over to you, Debbie.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you, Sharon. It's been really interesting to hear from another place that is a bit further down the line. So looking at the sort of ideas around being patient and developing the relationships, and then seeing those things evolve and come together, and seeing people working together to get really good output. So I think that's really, really helpful for us to see things further on down the line, because there's an awful lot of work that's been going into sort of the thinking and preparing. And we just need that momentum to keep going. So thank you. So I think the council has been really busy over the last year. A lot of resources gone into responding to the pandemic, and we've been helping to provide welfare support, testing, housing for vulnerable people, manning community helplines. But through this, there's been an awful lot of engagement and relationship building, and a number of projects have managed to come forward, and there's an awful lot happening. And I just want to take you guys through having a look at some of those projects, following the themes of the Gosport story. So under the theme of reimagining and animating our history, we've touched on already today our rich heritage, and there are a number of projects and initiatives underway to help bring forward some of our vacant and underused heritage sites. There's the Gosport Heritage Action Zone, which is a scheme working in partnership with Historic England, developing a number of projects over a number of years. There's a number of schemes already underway. Bastion number 1, people in and around Gosport may have seen the large-scale clearance that happened with all the overgrown bushes and trees. And now we're moving forward into the next phase where we're looking to do some repairs to the actual fabric of the structure and being able to open it up so that people can start enjoying spending time in those spaces. And similarly, Pretty's Hard, where the Portsmouth Naval Base Property Trust are making really good progress implementing their planning permission, which is bringing a number of significant listed buildings back into beneficial use for employment and other uses. There's an awful lot of activity focused in and around Gosport High Street, and we have our Heritage Action Zone that's focused just on that. The Gosport Museum, I have a planning application in at the moment for redevelopment of the site, which has some internal and external refurbishment, building on the use that they've already been delivering for several years, and introducing some new ideas there and really engaging with the high street physically. So we're hoping to consider those proposals formally soon. The High Street Market, we've just completed a study looking at how we can perhaps support and develop that, and also thinking about ideas of indoor markets as well. So that's another area where we can hopefully bring some life and activity back into the high street, recognising that the retail function has changed, and we need to have a real rethink around the purpose of the high street, focus perhaps on it as a leisure destination, making the most of our waterfront location, which I'll touch on later. The cultural programme, we've been working with the Arts Council, who very generously offered some finance to help develop a cultural strategy for Gosport, recognising that that's an area where we need to actually put some resource and effort in and engagement with some of our undeveloped communities. So the Royal Arms Canopy it's a site in Stoke Road where there's a canopy that actually overhangs the highway, and it's been in poor condition for a number of years. And despite a planning application to develop the building itself, the canopies continue to deteriorate. And through the High Street Has programme, we've managed to secure some funding to help restore and repair that structure, which on the ground we'll start to see some actual physical changes. And similarly, we're looking to roll out a grants programme in the High Street as well. So a number of our buildings in the High Street have significant heritage value, but perhaps have not been maintained, may have been empty for a number of years. So again, it's trying to sort of bring life back into the town centre. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. So under our Deep Blue celebration, maximising Gosport's waterfront potential, as I've touched on, a number of schemes looking now to really focus on that as a beneficial way of enjoying time in Gosport. So the Gosport Transport Interchange, you may have noticed there's some sort of exploratory trenches and things happening around there at the moment, but there is quite a significant proposal to redevelop the bus station to provide a modern, updated, multi-functioning transfer facility. So incorporating the ferry, the buses, the taxi and physical drop-off and pick-up, and trying also to maximise use of cycling in Gosport as well, because we recognise that a number of people's first experience of Gosport is when they get off the ferry, and what we want to create is somewhere where there's a sense of arrival, and then people know where to go and things are signposted. So this links to a number of initiatives around the High Street, and also linking to a number of our heritage sites around the waterfront area. So giving people a clear idea of arriving in destination and where to go next. And we're also hoping that by developing our bus station site, which also includes development of the former bus station site for hopefully a food and beverage outlets with a heritage centre, we can encourage that wider uplift of the waterfront generally and encourage further regeneration. We currently have a planning application from Premier Marine looking to undertake a number of works within their site. And they're very keen to work with us under these themes to really develop the town centre and wider area and regenerate and create jobs. Further afield, we have Daedalus waterfront area where there are a number of heritage assets as well. And Historic England have been working with us to help look at the feasibility of bringing some of the buildings there back into use. And Homes England, who own the site, have just marketed the site again and currently considering some tenders for a mixed-use employment-led development for the waterfront area, but also focusing on Daedalus as a destination and creating public realm, leisure uses, and again, making most of the waterfront location. In private ownership, we've got Royal Clarence Yard retained area, as we refer to it, which is the area between the main Royal Clarence Yard and the town centre, Victoria Quay, where UK Docks are making really good progress on restoring some of the listed buildings on the site and also creating jobs. It is a challenging site. There are always contamination and issues around the condition of buildings with former MOD land, but they're making great progress working with us, engaged in increasing public access to their site, because the main theme is around allowing the public to enter into these sites and really enjoy the buildings and understand the history that we can provide a narrative for. Next slide, please, Sarah. The environment for fresh thinking, preparing for the future and working in partnership. We spent a lot of time trying to capture what our issues and challenges are, because we felt we needed to do that. And we've been working with the LEP and produced the infrastructure investment plan. And that document, although we've always sort of had evidence and statistics, we've tried to capture all of our challenges and opportunities within one document to provide a framework for how we want to take things forward. We've got the Transforming Cities Fund, working with Portsmouth City Council and Hampshire. That's helping to fund the bus station redevelopment that I talked about previously. Gosport has and High Street has very much partnership working with Historic England and other community groups. The economic development strategy we've mentioned earlier on today, which again is key in linking in with businesses and other key stakeholders. And Gosport Story, work with the Place Board and Ambassadors. And I think engagement with the community is something that we need to really focus on, because as we come out of the pandemic, we need to really understand where people's priorities are, and so that we can be sure as a council we're delivering for the community. And Gosport Cultural Compact, working with the Place Board and Arts Council, and there's some discussions sort of linked in with the Gosport Museum as a result of some of the meetings on the House Board has developed that relationship. So under the theme of our growth is natural and new, we have some opportunities. The government has announced some quite significant funding called Levelling Up. There's £4 billion available to local authorities in England, just been announced. We're in a good position in respect to, there's been a recognition of our challenges and the fact that we have a great need in certain areas, and we've been given Category 1 status, which should place us in a good position when we're developing a bid to try and secure up to £20 million, working around 3 themes: transport, which we've talked about, regeneration of the town centre, again focusing on High Street has, and then cultural and heritage assets. So we feel we're in a really good place with the works that we've done to date. We've got a clear set of strategies set out to really put together a bid that is very cohesive and strong in those areas, and hoping to be able to address some of our deprivation areas around education, employment, health and wellbeing, and sense of place. So there's a deadline of the 18th of June for the submission of this bid. We're really keen for the ambassadors to play a key role in helping us to develop this. We've got our heads together and started to think of some ideas. but we're really interested to hear of other people's ideas around the themes that I've just outlined above. So in addition to any Q&As today, please do send any ideas to Andrew Sugden with the email address that we've provided. And we'd be happy to have further discussions and perhaps form an ambassadorial group of people where we can help ideas develop and feed into the bid process that we'd be putting together. So really now is the time to start making a difference. And I think working in Gosport for so many years, we have aspirations, and people have said to me, but we say we're going to do it and things don't happen. And I think we've listened to that. We've put together, captured the ideas, issues, challenges. We've got some clear strategies. The Gosport story sets out some really clear themes, and we're starting to move forward on a number of initiatives to address some of the issues that we've got. So there hasn't been a time before now that I can think of where we've been in such a good place in terms of everything aligning. And we need to make the best of the financial opportunities that are open to us. And the absolute key to being successful with this is engaging with everybody, feeding in ideas and working together to deliver the positive change that the Gosport deserves and changing people's perceptions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Debbie. Very interesting. That concludes the presentation. So we are now going to move to a panel. I'd like to thank Sarah, Sharon and Debbie for their contributions. So I'm just going to read through the questions. Hopefully we'll get through as many of them as we can in the time that remains. So firstly, we have a question for Sarah from Councillor Piers Bateman. So thank you for your question, Councillor. First, it's referenced Sarah's excellent presentation, which obviously some nice feedback. Can you give a short burst on what actions the term multiple interventions might encompass?
Thanks, Andy. I think that maybe that's probably been covered through Debbie's section in terms of all of those different projects, interventions that are listed. So I don't think I can really add anything additional to that, because as I say, those projects and interventions will be developed as opportunities come up. As Debbie's rightly said, in terms of the budget a couple of weeks ago, that Gosport is in a very fortunate position to bid for that levelling up money, and you have a strong story, a strong governance in terms of being place-led. So that will put you in a really good position for government to take the bid that you guys put forward seriously.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor. Next, we have a question for Sharon. Do you feel that stakeholders in Harlow have engaged well using the visual brand?
Yeah, they have. So, so not every ambassador uses it, but there is a good chunk of them that do. And of those that do, they'll use it in various different ways. So as Sarah said earlier, you can dial up and dial down the imagery to suit what you need. So it's very much designed to go with an existing brand, not to be a brand on its own. So that can, in Harlow, we've had people from using it from having a business card where if it's a franchise, for example, and they've got Harlow on there, they'll just use the Harlow font maybe, right the way through to we've got a time credit program where the banknotes, the time credit banknotes use the visual imagery, right the way through to the council who have used on where they've got construction sites, they'll use it on business hoarding and that kind of thing as well. And it's been used across all three sectors, so the charity sector, the private and the public, to quite good extent. And I'm always surprised how creative people are with it as well. You just give them the pack and off they go. And the only thing that I ask is just to kind of have a look at what they're doing, just so that we can keep a record of how much it's being used. And I'm always really pleased with how they use it. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Sharon. Next question's for Debbie from Malcolm's team. So thank you, Malcolm, for your question. Is the current Stokes Bay project linked to the waterfront initiatives you've described?
The Stokes Bay, the conservation area designation is part of the HAS scheme, yes. So it is very much around waterfront location and developing all of those connections as part of that overall story.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Next from the Rain Charlie from Utilitia. energy, so I've pronounced that incorrectly. So it's a statement essentially first, which is, I think, highlights the work that can happen. So this is from Lorraine Charlie. We are a new company in Gosport. We have a hub in the High Street. We would like to build on partnerships and community work. During the COVID lockdown, we have volunteered with the food banks and Jacob's Well Centre. We've also donated clothes to the homeless in this area, all brand new from the factory. How can you see us working with you and building a partnership with you and the local area? So, Debbie, are you able to sort of take that one?
Yeah, I think through regular meetings, I think, and general conversations and activities, I think we've started that process, but I think that needs to evolve. And under the various different initiatives, it's having sort of groups of like-minded people or people that are interested in particular areas that we can take forward separately whilst under the overall banner. So happy to engage and have a separate conversation offline to see how we can explore that further.
Brilliant, thank you, Debbie. There's a question for me. How are the students at St Vincent College looking to get involved in the Gosport story, and how can young people in general be involved? Well, our students actually were involved in the initial sort of research stage, which Sarah came to our college and met some of our students. And I think actually what that visit highlighted for me as principal was actually that our students don't recognise the potential from the town in which they live. I think what really blew me away was the number of students that never actually made use of the waterfront, who live in Gosport, who'd never spent time and utilised the resources. So as a college, we're very conscious that our aim is to raise the aspirations of young people and to celebrate the success that they've had. And that includes the environment in which they live. I'm from Portsmouth, so I've lived there all my life, but actually I love coming into Gosport each day. I think it's got wonderful community aspects. It's got some wonderful areas and facilities that, when you live on the doorstep of an area, living in Portsmouth, it's only in lockdown that I go to the seafront now. You know, used to drive past it every day. Just took that area completely for granted that I live 5 minutes from the sea. And it's actually motivated me to stay in the city when I was thinking of moving. And I think the same applies to our students, getting them to recognise and celebrate their achievements here, and that they can take that and their aspirations into the local community. We want young people to see that they have a future in Gosport, that they are a part of the Gosport's future, and they are what's going to drive it. Not just our 16 to 19-year-olds, but also our adult learners who are engaging in either our community learning, the access to HE provision, which is designed to support them to raise their own aspirations by going to university and pursuing new career paths. There's a lot of opportunity. And I think through the local schools, you know, we similarly can engage numerous families who can become ambassadors, can promote the area and take pride. And I think that's a big part as well. You know, people should be proud of, you know, some of the key aspects in Gosport, our history, our heritage, the opportunities that exist. And the work that we'll do with students will very much sort of afford that. I think similarly to the challenges we found as an ambassador sort of scheme, having to do a lot of this remotely for the last year, has presented some barriers to us being able to do that. But now that we've got students back, we're very much looking to make the best use of our resources and facilities to assist with that. So I hope that answers the question. I think we've got a statement as much as anything. So from Kathy, it's great to hear all the good things happening in Harlow. Some brilliant ideas about cycling and the cycle library. Something that would work well here in Gosport, which has never capitalised on the high levels of cycling and good routes. Lots of untapped potential. So I'd agree with that. I think I think going back to what we're doing with students, I'm actually working with Hampshire County Council to look at how we promote cycle schemes, how we promote use of resources and local cycling infrastructure to enable students to be more mobile. It's really useful. I know that's an area that the council are also looking at. So going further down, June Cully, transport in the town, can we encourage cleaner vehicles to improve air quality and reduce noise? Like the idea of a tourist cycle route, as we have a wealth of sites that can be visited, such as Harlow. Just with regards to sort of vehicles such, are you aware of any strategies or plans, Debbie, in relation to trying to ensure we've got a more environmentally friendly air quality related to vehicle use?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. We are looking at it in terms of our own fleet going forwards, but also the bus companies are as well. So yeah, we're all looking to be more carbon neutral and environmentally friendly. And I think the levelling up monies with regard the sort of the whole approach to transport in Gosport gives us an opportunity to have a rethink around that, picking up on the cycle routes and linking our heritage sites and making it easier for people to get around. So I think it's all part of the same sort of theme, really. Yes.
I'm conscious of time. We will only have time for probably a couple more questions. I've got one here for Sharon. What do you see as your biggest achievement since the launch of your approach in Harlow?
Oh, that's a good one. Biggest achievement. I think there's several really. I think I'm trying to think of the one I'm most proud of, and I guess I'm proud of how many ambassadors we've got. You know, it does fluctuate, but we've got around 450 at the moment. Well, actually, I think maybe crept up to about 480, and I'm very proud of that because you know, it is very sustainable. Those guys have been with us for 3 years. They get involved. They write blogs for our monthly newsletter. They get involved and write articles for our Stories magazine, which is something we've developed as well. So I'm really proud of that and the communication, the ambassador program. And I'm really proud of the projects too. I think particularly from a personal point of view, I'm most proud of the rooftop solar park initiative that we're trying to put, because that's huge. And the idea is that, you know, we could become carbon neutral by having a solar park that's not, we haven't got space to have it in fields like they have in perhaps some areas of Suffolk, but we've got a lot of flat roof space, so we could actually just put ours up on the roof. And so Discover Harlow is quite instrumental in getting the first 9 council buildings to put solar panelling on, and that's kind of phase 1, and then we're hoping to develop that, move that out through the ambassadors with kind of programs and ways to develop it so that we can encourage that. So yeah, I guess they're the 2 things I'm most proud of.
I just come in there, Sharon. I think it'd be good to just briefly mention in terms of the City Nation Place, in terms of being shortlisted.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so we did, we're kind of about 18 months in, and I applied for, there's a group called City Nation Place, which is basically the global group for place branding. So they usually it's kind of whole countries, so it'll be Barbados and things like that, and they have a conference every year, and they have an award ceremony sponsored by the New York Times. And about 18 months, or it was about, yeah, a year, 18 months into the project, I saw this and I thought it would be great to kind of apply for it, if only really just to go through the process, because I knew they would ask the questions that would maybe challenge the way we were doing things. And so I did that. And then was blown away to get an email that said we'd been shortlisted, and being a bit skeptical, I thought, oh, they probably shortlisted everyone. Until I realised that actually they'd had well over 200 applicants, and they'd shortlisted down to 8, and the others were on the shortlist with us were Barcelona, California, Estonia, the whole of Estonia, and Brand, Scotland. And of course, all of those are big, you know, they have big budgets, they have big teams, and Discover Harlow is just me. And at that time it was me and my job share partner, and yeah, so we kind of went along to London and we went to the awards ceremony. We didn't win, Eindhoven did, but just to be there kind of in that process was amazing. Yeah, amazing. So thank you, Sarah, for reminding me of that.
Well, I think that's a wonderful sort of point to end on. My apologies, we've not been able to get to all of the questions today. They will be logged, and we will provide a reply to them when we send out the recording of today's sessions. It just remains for me now to thank all of our contributors from today, Sarah, Debbie and Sharon. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you, each and every one of you who's given up some valuable time today to find out a little bit more about the Gosport Ambassador scheme, and hopefully you can support us and indeed support Gosport on this journey as we move forward. The real power of ambassadors is about hearing about new initiatives, developments, and sharing our success stories. So thank you all very much for your time today. The next ambassadors meeting is due to take place on the 11th of May, and we will send details of that in due course. Can I wish you all a wonderful day? My best wishes to you and your families during this time. And if there is anything you want to share and you get the information out, please don't forget to use the hashtag #ThisIsGosport. So best wishes, take care, and on that note, I'll bid you all farewell. Take care.